friends, Laurelei Black here from Blade Broom, and this week we're going to be talking about how to connect with unknown ancestors. So this is a topic that I get asked about a lot because there are a wide variety of reasons why you as a practitioner of this path may want to connect with ancestors but don't know who they are consciously in this life. So perhaps, for example, you are a child or a grandchild in an adopted family. Or perhaps you are a child or a grandchild whose family has had some kind of traumatic family experience in which either you yourself or your parent needed to cut themselves off from your family line. So from their parents or your parents, and therefore you're disconnected from the rest of your family in some way, whether that's the entire extended family or just sort of that genealogical line. And so you're either missing genealogical information like your grandparents' names or even your parents' names. Maybe you've been in the fostering system or something like that and you're missing pieces. Or maybe you had to disconnect in some other way or were forced to disconnect in some way. There are a million possible reasons why that could happen, and they're almost always pretty traumatic emotionally and psychologically. So I empathize with you and I sympathize with you wherever you may be in that place. And one of the reasons that I'm able to sympathize so deeply is because my own dad was a child of adoption. So I won't get into all of the specifics of my particular family story, just because we all have our own details and we all have our own personal sort of trials and challenges with that type of thing. But I just wanted to share it in order to say that I relate on a personal level to what this can be like. And that I know that it's possible to use the techniques that I'm going to share and the other ideas around it that I'm going to share in order to do meaningful ancestor work. The very first thing that I want to give to you is the biggest tool or tip about actually connecting with your biological ancestors as a person who is otherwise disconnected from biological family or has very little information about biological ancestors. So I want to get that tip out of the way first thing out of the gate before I give any other information. And that is that there is an old saying that blood calls to blood. And I want to remind you that scientifically, we have information that goes along with this very sort of poetic piece of sort of folkloric gnosis. So the folkloric gnosis is that blood calls to blood. But the scientific piece is that there's all sorts of information encoded in your DNA, which is carried in your blood. It's carried in other cells in your body as well, but it's certainly in your blood. And in your bone, and in your flesh. It's in your hair, it's in your smile, it's your physical being is a manifestation of your ancestry, of your family, of your ancient, deep family. And you yourself are the product of the thousand loves that have come before you. Your body carries the wisdom that you are seeking. And that is a powerful thing. It is a hugely powerful thing. You don't need the names of the people in order to connect with them. You don't. I know that it's satisfying in our information age to be able to get onto our computers and type that stuff in and be able to go, oh, the name that you're looking for is Sarah Johnson, or you want to find Albrecht Jotunheimer. I don't know. That'd be oddly specific and really cool to, to have that kind of name come back. But, Jotunheim. Interesting that that's what my that my melon kicked out. We want to be able to have that get kicked into our faces and to go, you want this name. And here, by the way, I found this picture of this person for you. And the truth of the matter is, we're going to struggle to find that kind of detailed information online about our ancestors. But what we can find is a spiritual connection through our blood wisdom, through our bone wisdom. Within my spiritual tradition and within many sort of folkloric spiritual traditions, there is this idea of three souls, the tripartite soul. And I've done another video on this. I'll link it for you. Many traditional societies have this idea that the soul is not one thing, but three things, or sometimes three of three things. And that one of those souls, which we call the red soul, is linked to our ancestral ties. Within my tradition, we refer to that as the red soul, or the bone soul. But we think of it as the red of the marrow, deep inside the bone, right? So it is the red thread that connects us to our family line. It is kind of the blood soul, and it connects us to our witchcraft family as well. So it is that family as well. It's spiritual ancestry in addition to physical ancestry. So you carry the information that you need. You just need to tap into it. And you can do that through things like meditation techniques, through scrying into a dark mirror or a light mirror, through scrying into a cauldron of water, through divination like tarot and mediumship development and these other spiritual practices. This is how witches have always gotten in touch with ancestors, and it's still available to you. And there are lots of ways to dive into that. So start diving. And if you are not afraid of getting into a little bit of blood magic, it only takes one drop. You've got all of the drops in you already, so you don't have to bring any of it out of your body if you don't want to, if that's not something that you're okay with. But if you are okay with it, you could also do something like incorporating some sigil work to specifically bring that connection to the surface and empowering it with a raised drop of your blood. And be very conscious when you bring that one drop or those 3 drops up, that when you put that to the paper or to whatever, the wood or the cloth or whatever you are sigilizing, that it holds the information that you're seeking, that link to your ancestors. Now, some of the other information that I want to give you and that I want to remind you of is that your blood ancestors are not the only ancestors that you have, and that family isn't just about blood. So I know I'm not saying new things here. I'm sure that you've heard this before, but I think it's really important to repeat this. Your ancestors are also your adopted ancestors. If they are good people that have been raising you, if there is love there, then your adopted family is also your family. And in some cultures, the bonds of adoption are even stronger than the bonds of blood, because the family that we choose and the family that we make oaths to protect, those oaths bind us even longer than the bonds of blood itself. That's true in some cultures. It was true for the Celts. It was true for the Britons specifically. So I'm speaking to that right now specifically because that's one that I know with certainty. But it's true in other parts of the world as well. So, and I think in this day and age, we talk a lot about, I know it's something that I've mentioned with my friends, and I see it with friends of friends and in my wider sort of circles or networks, that this idea of my biological family, I'm not speaking about my biological family, but I hear this a lot from people that say, I could never count on my biological family. They treated me terribly and they never understood me and they abandoned me or rejected me when I came out as a witch, or when I came out as trans, or when I came out as whatever alternate aspect of your personality or your makeup or your being that a person needed to come out as, and then they found rejection at the hands of their biological family, but they discovered a whole other family of people that were more true to them and acted as mom, dad, sister, brother, you know, sibling, parent, nibbling, you know, whatever family relationship, that these other people were there for them. And that those bonds were very intense and have been very intense, often for decades and lasting the rest of a person's life. So be very conscious of the fact that blood is not the only thing that defines who your family is. And apply that. Apply that to your magic, apply that to your view of your ancestor work. And give that to your adopted family if they are good and loving people who have raised you and given you love and have given you familyhood and are deserving and worthy of familyhood from you in return. We use these kinds of terms even within the craft, right? We use the term family to describe our relationship with each other. We use the term kin or kindred within our spiritual families. And it's for a reason, because we understand that our family of origin is not the only family that exists for us. So there are other tools that you can use too besides specifically blood. You can use some other types of altar items that are sort of generic in their content, but that can be focal points for you in directing your energy. Some people are really gonna hate what I'm about to say next, and that's okay. I'm cool with that. But I think all tools, on some level, are kind of like Dumbo's magic feathers. You don't really have to have them to fly. You don't really have to have them to do the magic, but they're really, really great at giving you the confidence in your ability. They're really great at helping you direct and focus the energy. So the tools that we use, the things that we have on ancestor altars, typically, like the one behind me, are either gifts for ancestors, and those aren't really so much in the magic feather category, right? Because that's something that I've given to them, and it doesn't belong to me anymore. Or they're a tool for me to help me focus when I'm trying to call on them or trying to work with a group of them. And those things I could live without. I just choose to have them there because I like them. So things that are really great and that I have chosen to have as representations for unknown ancestors, ancestors for whom I don't have a name and may never have names unless they whisper them to me in some way. But even then, I may never have verification of those names because I probably won't ever find them on Ancestry.com or something like that, right? The kinds of tools that I like to use are things like skulls, and you can see a couple of different types of skulls behind me. So I've got one back here that's a crystal skull, and I've got another one that's a paper mache skull that one of my coven sisters made for me several years ago. I also have things like poppets that I've made to represent different types of people in my family. People with different types of professions, or people who had different types of roles. So I've got a few different types of dolls on my altar because I like them, and I find them useful for that, for helping me visualize. And then they become a sort of vessel for those types of spirits. I also have a jar of dirt.
Look what I got. I got a jar of dirt. I got a jar of dirt. And guess what's inside it?
Which you can see over here. It's actually a jar of graveyard dirt, which I am using to collect samples of graveyard dirt from different cemeteries and grave sites in places where my ancestors are buried here in the United States. I have candles aplenty. I have offerings that are for ancestors in general. There are a set of keys. The keys actually are not as much representative of specific ancestors or even general ancestors as they are for Hecate, who is a psychopomp, a spirit who, in this case a goddess, who is a keeper of the crossroads and of the paths to the dead. She is one who leads people to and from the underworld. And so that might be a helpful tool or a focal point for you in order to access ancestors. Hecate, Hel, Hermes, Persephone, Hades, Ereshkigal, keepers of the underworld, and psychopomps who lead spirits back and forth between the underworld and this world are often good spirits to call upon in order to gain access to our ancestors. So in my mind, something like a key with a bit of your blood on it could be a super powerful tool for unlocking the secrets of your family line. If you were looking for a talisman to work with to help unlock some of these mysteries for yourself. I would use such a thing if I were feeling blocked and locked out of this kind of information. I would hold on to this tool or put it between myself and a scrying mirror while I was scrying as a way to unlock this information. Just a thought. Okay, so one last thought, and that is that we all lose track of our ancestors at some point in our research. So whether we have family trauma, or we're children or grandchildren of adoption, and we've lost track really early in the process, and maybe we don't even know who our biological parents are, or we're genealogy enthusiasts and we've done lots and lots of research and can go back in some parts of our line. And I'll point out, it's usually only in some parts of your line where you can go back
beyond Charlamagne.
We can only get so far back before the records just dry up and die out, because at some point there just aren't enough family Bibles that have things written in them, or there just aren't enough records. There just aren't, you know. Some folks have a really hard time with genealogical research because their family histories didn't get the benefit of being documented very well. Enslaved peoples didn't get that kind of documentation. And Native peoples, indigenous peoples didn't get that level of documentation. And then there are lots of issues of just class and poverty that also made issues of documentation more difficult and less reliable as well. So, and lots of records have gotten lost along the way or destroyed or damaged just due to things like fire and, you know, the elements. So most of us have trails that run cold anyway in our genealogical research. So there's going to come a point, no matter how diligent you are in trying to track down information, you're going to hit dead ends. You're going to run out of names on paper or in digital files. You just are, which means you're going to come to a point where you're going to have to rely on the spirits to tell you what it is that you need to know, and your spiritual connection to the ancestors to be enough for you. And it may have to be okay that you don't have a name for that spirit that comes to you, that is a guardian of your family line, or that the name that they give you, you're going to have to trust that that's the name that they want you to have, even if it's not 100% historically accurate, that it's the name you need. We are not just the product of 1,000 loves. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of years of human history, most of which are completely undocumented. And our ancestors from so far back in the line have wisdom to share with us if we're willing to listen, if we're willing to hear. We have to find ways to hear that are not as direct as a YouTube video or an Instagram story. You know, it may not be smack in your face, and we have to open ourselves up to this more subtle dialogue. So I hope that what I've shared with you today can be an inspiration to you to opening up to that conversation, and that there are some tools here for you for listening to those whispers from the dim past, to feeling the pulse in your blood and your bone, that touch from ancient memory, because our ancestors are ever present and they want to connect, and you have everything that you need to do that, except perhaps confidence. And I hope that I have been able to share some of that with you, because you can do it. You can do it. All right, friends. Leave me comments, ask questions, let me know what you'd like to hear more about. I will be back with you next Monday at noon with more content. And in the meantime, like, subscribe, share, do all the things, and I will see you soon. Bye, friends.